Hi everybody! Welcome to part 4 of the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Little cold and dreary out there today, but we're inside now, got a fire going. So that'll make it nice and warm. Okay, here we go. Wonders upon wonders. In the sitting room of the doctor's house, just as you enter the room, there stands on the left hand, close against the wall, a high glass case in which the children preserve all the beautiful things which are given to them every year. Louise was quite a little girl when her father had the case made by a skillful joiner who set in it such large clear panes of glass and arranged all the parts so well together that everything looked much brighter and handsomer when on its shelves than when it was held in the hands. On the upper shelf, which Maria and Fred were unable to reach, stood all Godfather Drosselmeyer's curious machines. Immediately below this was a shelf for the picture books. The two lower shelves Maria and Fred filled up as they pleased, but it always happened that Maria used the lower one as a house for her dolls, while Fred, on the contrary, cantoned his troops in the one above. And so it happened today, for while Fred set his hussars in order above, Maria, having laid Miss Trutchen aside, and having installed the new and sweetly dressed doll in her best furnished chamber below, had invited herself to tea with her. I have said that the chamber was well furnished, and it is true. Here was a nice chintz sofa and several tiny chairs. There stood a tea table, but above all, there was a clean white little bed for her doll to repose upon. All these things were arranged in one corner of the glass case, the sides of which were hung with cheerful pictures, and it will be readily supposed that in such a chamber the new doll, Miss Clara, must have found herself very comfortable. It was now late in the evening, and night indeed was close at hand, and Godfather Drosselmeyer had long since gone home. Yet still the children could not leave the glass case, although their mother repeatedly told them that it was high time to go to bed. "It is true," cried Fred at last. "The poor fellows," meaning his hussars, "would like to get a little rest, and as long as I am here, not one of them will dare to nod. I know that." With these words he went up to bed, but Maria begged very hard. "Only leave me here a little while, dear mother. I have 2 or 3 things to attend to, and when they are done, I will immediately go to bed." Maria was a very good and sensible child, and therefore her mother could leave her alone with her playthings without anxiety. But for fear she might become so interested in the new doll and other presents as to forget the lights which burned around the glass case, her mother blew them all out, and left only the lamp which hung down from the ceiling in the middle of the chamber, and which diffused a soft, pleasant light. "Come in soon, dear Maria, or you will not be up in time tomorrow morning," called her mother as she went up to bed. There was something Maria had at heart to do which she had not told her mother, though she knew not the reason why, and as soon as she found herself alone, she went quickly about it. She still carried in her arms the wounded Nutcracker, rolled up in her pocket handkerchief. Now she laid him carefully upon the table, unrolled the handkerchief softly, and examined his wound. Nutcracker was very pale, but still he smiled so kindly and sorrowfully that it went straight to Maria's heart. "Ah, Nutcracker, Nutcracker, do not be angry at Brother Fred because he hurt you so. He did not mean to be so rough. It's the wild soldier's life with his hussars that has made him a little hard-hearted, but otherwise he is a good fellow, I can assure you. Now I will tend you very carefully until you are well and merry again. As to fastening your teeth and setting your shoulders, that Godfather Drosselmeyer must do. He understands such things." But Maria was hardly able to finish the sentence, for as she mentioned the name of Drosselmeyer, friend Nutcracker made a terrible wry face, and there darted something out of his eyes like green, sparkling flashes. Maria was just going to fall into a dreadful fright, when behold, it was the sad, smiling face of the honest Nutcracker again, which she saw before her, and she knew now that it must be the glare of the lamp, which, stirred by the draught, had flared up and distorted Nutcracker's features so strangely. "Am I not a foolish girl," she said, "to be so easily frightened, and to think that a wooden puppet could make faces at me? But I love Nutcracker too well, because he is so droll and so good-tempered. Therefore he shall be taken good care of, as he deserves." With this, Maria took friend Nutcracker in her arms, walked to the glass case, stooped down, and said to her new doll, "Pray, Miss Clara, be so good as to give up your bed to the sick and wounded Nutcracker, and make out as well as you can with the sofa. Remember that you are well and hearty, or you would not have such fat red cheeks, and very few little dolls have such nice sofas." Miss Clara, in her gay Christmas attire, looking very grand and haughty, and would not even say muck. "But why should I stand upon ceremony?" said Maria, and she took out the bed, laid little Nutcracker down upon it softly, and gently rolled a nice ribbon, which she wore around her waist, about his poor shoulders, and then drew the bedclothes over him snugly, so that there was nothing to be seen of him below the nose. "He shan't stay with the naughty Clara," she said, and raised the bed with Nutcracker in it to the shelf above, and placed it close by the pretty village, where Fred's hussars were quartered. She locked the case and was about to go up to bed when, listen, children, when softly, softly it began to rustle and to whisper and to rattle round and round under the hearth, behind the chairs, behind the cupboards and the glass case. The great clock whirled louder and louder, but it could not strike. Maria turned towards it, and there the large gilt owl that sat on the top had dropped down its wings, so that they covered the whole face, and it stretched out its ugly head with a short crooked beak, and looked just like a cat. And the clock whirred louder in plain words. "Dick-free, dick-free, dock, whirr, softly clock. Mouse King has a fine ear, purr, purr, pum, pum. The old song let him hear, purr, purr, pum, pum. Or he might run away in a fright. Now clock strikes softly and light." And pum, pum, it went with a dull, deadened sound 12 times. Maria began now to tremble with fear, and she was upon the point of running out of the room in terror when she beheld Godfather Drosselmeyer, who sat in the owl's place on top of the clock and had hung down the skirts of his brown coat just like wings. A little spookier than the ballet. But she took courage and cried out loudly with sobs, "Godfather Drosselmeyer, Godfather Drosselmeyer, what are you doing up there? Come down and do not frighten me so, you naughty Godfather Drosselmeyer." Just then a wild squeaking and whimpering broke out on all sides, and then there was a running, trotting, and galloping behind the walls as if 1,000 little feet were in motion, and 1,000 little lights flashed out of the crevices in the floor. But they were not lights, no, they were sparkling little eyes, and Maria perceived that mice were all around, peeping out and working their way into the room. Presently it went trot, trot, hop, hop, about the chamber. And more mice, in greater or smaller parties, galloped across, and at last placed themselves in line and column, just as Fred was accustomed to place his soldiers when they went to battle. This, Maria thought, was very droll, and as she had not had that aversion to mice which most children have, her terror was gradually leaving her, when all at once there arose a squeaking so terrible and piercing that it seemed as if ice-cold water was poured down her back. Ah, what did she now see? I know, my worthy reader, Frederick, that thy heart, like that of the wise and brave soldier Frederick Stahlbaum, sits in the right place. But if thou hadst seen what Maria now beheld, thou wouldst certainly have run away. Yes, I believe that thou wouldst have jumped as quickly as possible into bed, and then have drawn the covering over thine ears from much farther than was necessary to keep thee warm. Alas, poor Maria could not do that now, for, listen, children, close before her feet there burst out sand and lime and crumbled wall stones, as if thrown up by some subterranean force, and 7 mice heads with 7 sparkling crowns rose out of the floor, squeaking and squealing terribly. Presently the mouse's body to which these 7 heads belonged worked its way out, and the great mouse, crowned with the 7 diadems, squeaking loudly, advanced to meet his army, which at once set itself in motion, and hut, hut, trot, trot, it went. Alas, straight towards the glass case, straight towards poor Maria, who stood close before it. Her heart had before beat so terribly from anxiety and fear that she thought it would leap out of her bosom. And then she knew she must die. But now it seemed as if the blood stood still in her veins. Half fainting, she tottered backward, when clatter, clatter, rattle, rattle it went, and a glass pane which she had struck with her elbow fell in pieces at her feet. She felt at the moment a sharp pain in her left arm, but her heart all at once became much lighter. She heard no more squeaking and squealing. All had become still, and although she did not dare to look, yet she believed that the mice, frightened by the clatter of the broken glass, had retreated into their holes. But what was that again? Close behind her, in the glass case, a strange bustling and rustling began, and little fine voices were heard. And, children, that's where we're going to end the story tonight. Come back again tomorrow at 7 p.m. for the next installment of The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. And for those of you familiar with the ballet, this ain't nothing like the ballet. Talk to you later. Have a good night.